We're now live.
Thank you very much indeed. So welcome to the Corporate Parenting Subcommittee on the 16th of July 2020. And the first agenda item I need to hand over to Rishenda Greenhill, who's our Democratic Services Officer. Thank you, Rishenda.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to let everybody know that the Children and Young People Committee met on the 26th of May 2020 and we're pleased to reappoint Councillor Liz Every as the Chair of the Corporate Parenting Subcommittee and Councillor Anne Hay as the Vice Chair for the municipal year 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishenda. Thank you. I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via the Council's website. Members, you are by now aware of the need to keep your video camera switched on for the duration of the meeting and to keep your microphone muted, except when I invite you to speak. Please use the raised hand function if you wish to ask a question or comment. There is always a risk that we may run into technical problems, and I would ask for your patience if we do. Should this occur, I will declare an adjournment while the fault is addressed and the public broadcast will be paused. If it is not possible to resolve the problem, the meeting may need to be abandoned and reconvened at a later date. This is our first virtual meeting. Others have been doing this for some time, but for us at the subcommittee, this is our first meeting. And I'm really pleased that we're all now able to meet up with our officers and to start working with them, and particularly to welcome Nicola Curley, who would have been with us 2 meetings ago, but as they were cancelled wasn't, who's the Assistant Director of Children's Services, and to thank her and her team for the reports that you have put together and sent to us in order to keep us up to date during those cancelled meetings and also during COVID. It's been incredibly useful and it's managed to keep the momentum going until we actually have got here today. Please note that to facilitate discussion, I intend to waive the committee procedure ruling, limiting members' contributions to 5 minutes. I also propose to allow members to speak more than once on each item if appropriate. However, make sure that your contributions remain concise and to the point. Finally, I would remind all members and officers that virtual meetings will be recorded. As I'm aware that we have a new people around the table today, and there are not that many of us, I think it would be really useful if we were able to introduce ourselves. Obviously, I'm Councillor Liz Every, and if I could ask, this could do as a roll call as well, I think, James, if we could do that. So, and the Vice Chair?
I'm Councillor Anne Hay.
Thank you very much indeed. And we have Councillor Elisa Machini.
Hi, nice to see everyone. I'm Elisa and I represent King's Edge's division in Cambridge City.
Unfortunately, at the moment, we have not been joined by Councillor Anna Bradnam, and hopefully she will join us soon. And if we could also welcome Councillor Mark Goldsack today.
Good afternoon, I'm Mark Goldsack, County Councillor. My ward is Soham North and Isleham.
And we're delighted that you've subbed today in the place of Councillor Adela Costello. Thank you very much indeed. So if I may now introduce Nicola, or get Nicola to introduce herself.
Sorry. Good afternoon. My name's Nicola Curley. I'm the Assistant Director for Children's Services across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough.
Thank you very much indeed. And Sika?
Good afternoon, I'm Sika Smith and I'm the Lead Practice Improvement Manager. I also work across Cambridge and Peterborough Children's Social Care.
Thank you. And Fiona?
Hello, my name's Fiona Vandenhout. I'm the Head of Service for Corporate Parenting in Cambridgeshire.
Thank you very much indeed. And Ollie Day.
Hi, I'm Ollie Grant actually. I know it says that's misleading. Ollie Grant, and I'm the Independent Reviewing Service Manager, managing the IRO service in Cambridgeshire.
And you will be providing us with a report very soon. Thank you very much indeed. So if you could take that as the roll call, James, as well. Thank you. So turning to item 3, does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? No, in that case, we'll move on, and we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Have we had somebody join us, or did it just, no? So we are being asked, agenda item 4 on the agenda asks us to approve the minutes of the meeting on the 15th of January 2020 as an accurate record. Can I ask any member who does not agree with this proposal, please, to click the raised hand function on the right of your screen now? So nobody has indicated that. So on that basis, are members happy to approve the meetings as written, subject to, sorry, without change? And on that basis, the recommendations to approve the minutes is carried, and I will sign a hard copy when we return to the office. Right, if I now may move on to agenda item 5, which is the action log. Obviously, you've had a copy of these, and if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask, then please do by raising your blue hand on the hand function. However, Rashenda, I think there are a number of ongoing ones which are quite old now, and I just feel that we ought to be able to push these along a bit. And I'm just referring to the ones on the action log that right, just
Rashenda, can I just let you know I'm here now? Sorry.
Yes, that's noted. Thank you, Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you. Sorry to I was late.
That's it's fine, as long as you're okay.
I'm fine.
So the first one that seems to be ongoing is 117 and then 126 and 127. I wonder if we could try to push these on, because these go back to September.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we don't want to have ongoing things for too long. Has anybody else got any questions that they would like to ask about any of these action points? I would like to make a comment about 141, if I may, which was the agenda item for the NEAT report that we were hoping to get, which was the 6-month update on the refresh strategy. It was disappointing that this didn't come to the subcommittee, and we had quite some difficulty in trying to get it to the subcommittee. And then when we did get it to the subcommittee, we were cancelled because of COVID. However, for members of the subcommittee, it did arrive at CYP at the last meeting. So I just want to make absolutely certain that everybody is aware of that report. Some of us are on CYP and some aren't, and I just wouldn't want anybody to have missed that opportunity. So that has been out and is available on the CYP agenda pack for the last meeting. Right, okay, so if we can move on, as nobody has indicated that they wish to speak, so we'll take the action log as noted. So we go to item 6. And I understand we have received no public questions or petitions, so we will move to the next item of business. Before I just ask Nicola to present that report, I think this is probably one of the most exciting eras for us on the subcommittee, because we moved at the beginning of 4 years ago from a board to a subcommittee, and we worked really, really hard to get that subcommittee working on monitoring, and from the operational perspective of the CYP having the strategic role. And I think we did a lot of extremely good work. We drilled down into a lot of activities, and we had a really good working relationship with our officers, and I think we were doing it really well. Perhaps where we were not as successful as we would have liked to have been was being able to engage with our young people. We had some coordinated youngsters who came and spoke, but when they left to go on to good things, which was great, it was very difficult to replace them. And increasingly it became obvious that this particular way of working wasn't going to work. So perhaps COVID has given us an opportunity to look at how we want to take things forward. And this is our opportunity to look at other ways of working, because the voice of our young people is so important, and their experiences and their anecdotal information does inform what we do on this committee. And of course, they have the right and deserve to have feedback from this committee, that I'm really delighted that work that's been done over the last 3 or 4 months has come to fruition with this report that I will ask, please, Nicola, to present to us.
Thank you, Councillor Every. Yes, and thank you for this opportunity to really think about how we can extend, I think, the really good work that's happened. So I'm very conscious I wasn't part of, I think, some very significant developments and moving on for the committee over the last year, but I came in perhaps at the tail end of that this February and saw how far things had progressed, but that perhaps we just hadn't quite managed to have that final piece that then would link back through into our young people in quite the way that I think we would all like. And I think the other issue that just cemented that was we had the focus visit from Ofsted in relation to children in care in February. And that was an incredibly positive report. So I think that would be the first thing I'd want to highlight to the committee. It was a very positive report about children in care, said that we had made as a council very significant progress since the inspection the previous year. So they were really pleased at how far Cambridgeshire had come in only 12 months, but felt that there was still this little bit of tweaking. They could see the changes in the progress, but there was still this little bit of tweaking that perhaps we could do. So in that respect, and Councillor is absolutely right, because we were having to change things to work with COVID anyway. And I think what you'll find is that Seeker's report feeds on from this quite nicely and explains some of that. We looked again at perhaps how we might be able to develop the committee with your support to try and address those things. So I'm sure you've all read the model. Really what we're suggesting is that we continue to have 6 meetings a year, but 3 of them are formal in this way that we're experiencing at the minute. The other 3 are informal and they alternate, but they have a linked theme essentially. So and I think perhaps simplifying the themes that we'd had before, but does give, I think, the committee and the young people more flexibility, because if you have health, education and placement, then actually you can really fit almost anything under those that actually the committee want to be scrutinising and thinking about, or the young people want to draw to your attention, and that we would run those through the year and try and make the reports fit more effectively in a themed way. The informal meetings, we're hoping that we will be able to support young people to attend, and ultimately we'd like to work towards co-chairing with Councillor Every, and I think she'd be keen to do that with some of the young people, but have a more informal approach to it, so that we would have case studies perhaps around. The example I use quite often is about looking at a PEP, for example, so personal education plan, and actually that's easier for young people to talk to you about, but then you also can get underneath the skin, I think, of whether officers are delivering the kind of things that they ought to be from our young people's perspective. So that's the essence of the model. I think we've also tried to design a new way of presenting performance information for you, and I know that's later on in the agenda, but hopefully that would tie in as well to help you hone in on what we would be recommending that you would want to know that we're doing, and make sure that actually you can see immediately really if there's any areas where you want to ask us more questions, or areas where actually you can see that our progress has happened very successfully and we have moved things on. I think I very briefly speak about in my report about how the Children Care Council will work out, if that's all right with Councillor Every, because otherwise I think we're possibly slightly duplicating. But obviously the idea is that the participation with the young people starts in a very broad way and then builds up, so that we end up with a Children Care Council that the Corporate Parenting Subcommittee can feed into both ways, really. That's the plan behind it. And also obviously that we work with our care leavers, and they would have a specific stream as well where they would be able to feed into the committee. There is a bit in my report also about health assessments, because I know that's been a significant issue, and a worry, an understandable worry for the committee. But I don't know if it'd be helpful if I pause and see if there's any questions. I'm looking at Councillor Every. If I pause, if there's questions, and then I can talk about the health assessment bit, if that be helpful. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm absolutely certain there'll be questions, because this is really an opportunity for us all to discuss the way forward, as we always do, which is good. So the first hand raised was Councillor Lisa Machini.
Hello, thank you very much. So first of all, I would really like to thank Councillor Every for okay, I've lost my words now. Advising that this item was coming up and making sure we were on the ball. And I really appreciate it. If anything, in the whirlwind of everything else that was going on, I didn't comment earlier than this. But this is wonderful. I'm very glad to see all this. It's very promising. I really like the idea of the council, the children council thing. It's really quite nice. It sounds amazing. At this particular point in time, there were really two questions I wanted to ask. So the first one is actually in terms of participation, because I think it's great, the idea that you have informal meetings in between actual more formal meetings, which hopefully will be more accessible to children, and we can work on making them so, and all the rest of it. That's absolutely great. But from what I can remember from our pre-COVID times where we were meeting physically and stuff, I was on this committee for 2 years, I think. And there was that delightful young man that came. He came twice in 2 years. And we were trying desperately to get him along more and to get others along more. But it was always really difficult to get them to have the time and the ability to actually move, to come physically to a meeting. So my first question was whether we've done any work in actually identifying ways in which we can basically persuade young people to have more, to be able to commit participation. I mean, I'm no longer anything like a young person, but I do remember what it was like. And it can be, this isn't the kind of thing you presumably really want to do with your time. And I was wondering whether, if we saw any ways in which we could incentivize the presence, and if we saw any obstacles that we could see and how to address them. So that is mostly the first question. And this is both for present times when we have Zoom, but also later on when presumably Zoom might not be used anymore. So we'll have to think about that. So that's the first question. And the second question really is about the way that you conduct the meetings and you discuss reports and things. We have had this discussion once before. And we added a little box at the top of the reports, which is a really good idea to do because, it's a good summary and stuff. But I promise you, even as I cast my mind back to 15 years ago when I was 22, this isn't really the kind of stuff you read with any engagement, because they are reports and they're written as reports and they're not engaging. They're not the kind of thing that young people would, necessarily find the easiest thing to understand and comment on. And I was wondering if anybody, I sort of feel like we have to practice writing something that the young people are going to read. And this is going to be really, really difficult, because more difficult than we think. Because, if you want them to really understand what's going on and participate, you have to try and make sure that the information is going to be understood and absorbed. And I have in the current ways that the papers are done, I don't think we're there yet. And so I was wondering if we had any plans about that. So those are my two questions. I hope I didn't rant.
Oh, it's fine, thank you.
So would you like me to respond to those? Because I think so I think they're excellent points, and I think actually they go right to the heart of what we're trying to do actually. So thank you for that. I think what we're suggesting, so I don't think, if you want my honest opinion, I don't think you can make a committee meeting, a formal council committee meeting, a meeting that young people ever want to attend, if truthfully. So I think what I've done previously is sort of accept that. So rather than trying to get young people to come up. I think what we did was we accepted that and then looked at, well, how can we adapt to become a forum that actually we can have some representation from young people who do want to come. And so what we'll try and do with the informal meetings is we will make them much more informal. So we will tempt them with food. I find donuts is very effective. So we'll bring some but it's true, it's an old one, but it's true. We'll bring some food. We won't have all of the reports. So what you won't have in the informal meetings is this sort of bundle of papers that you're used to. There will be some background performance information that will be shared with you as members. And we will try and do, what we'll do instead is try and do this case study idea. So we hone in on a detail, a particular aspect of something. So for example, if we look at initial health assessments, that's been a big issue over a long period of time. What we might do is actually bring an initial health assessment to one of those informal meetings and actually perhaps ask a young person to talk through what it feels like to have a health assessment and why they don't always, because we also know that we have some young people who don't engage with their health assessments. So perhaps get them to talk to you about why they don't like doing that and what we could suggest and think about with health colleagues about how we could make them more useful and more engaging for young people. Do you see? So we would do it like that, rather than ask them to read a big long report about how many health assessments were achieved or not achieved in a particular month. And hopefully you would get more of an insight. What we have found works quite well sometimes is that then the committee see it from a different perspective suddenly, and then actually the questions you're asking us as officers become much more acute and much more effective in terms of, well, but this is not what our young people are telling us, this is not what our young people want, so how can you do that differently, Nicola? What are you going to provide that we can feel that young people have actually been able to engage with and have their views heard about? And it takes time. The initial meetings, I suspect, will be quite, I don't want to use the word chaotic, but not as regulated and organised as perhaps we're all used to. But as we develop and young people get to have relationships with you and feel that you're listening to them, we do find that then they think there's a point in coming. Because that's the other thing, is what they want to see is, well, I can see it made a difference. So I came to that meeting, I did give up a couple of hours straight after school when I could have been, on the Xbox or whatever. But actually, I know that the way we do initial health assessments ended up getting changed. Do you see what I mean? So that's the idea. It will take time. It won't work perfectly the first meeting, I can guarantee you, but that's what we're trying to achieve. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, of course it does. And, in terms of the chaotic and, the sort of like, I mean, if we had so much participation and so much input that, the meetings were kind of difficult to manage in that sense, I'd celebrate that as an achievement, if I'm honest. It would be fantastic. We need, forgive me for the bad language, but our backsides whipped into shape sometimes by people who actually know what's going on, and we need to listen to them. So I would welcome that. And yeah, in terms of the rest, thank you very much. It does make sense. And I look forward to engaging with this process. I think it will be very, very, very important.
And if I may say so, I think you'll be very good at it. So, and Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Nicola. I am going to bang on about the same thing that Councillor Moschini has done, but in a slightly different way. So we know, don't we, that we tried very hard, as Liz worked really hard to get young people to be involved. And my feeling from that, we were very lucky with Sam, but what we found was that often the meeting time or location or duration was difficult for the young people. And so what I'm suggesting is, why don't we do those informal meetings by Zoom or one of the video, which actually the youngsters are much more likely to be au fait with than we are. So just a thought on that they might prefer to take part in that way. Equally, I can see we might want to do it face to face when we can. But then we have all the problems of location and the timing. So it's just a thought. Can we consider doing those informally? And the other thing is, it's a kind of more fundamental thing. It's not trying to make the young people fit in with us. We need, if we want their engagement, we must fit in with them. And I just can't help feeling that if we want to be alongside, we need to be alongside them. And whatever works for them, we've got to put ourselves out and make ourselves fit in. So that's my suggestion. The other thing is, I really think those plain language summaries actually ought to be a requirement across the board at the council for every for every committee meeting and every paper, because actually I think they make everybody think quite hard about what are the salient points of this report. But actually with the suggestions that you're making, yes, I think it's a good idea, and maybe the way we could do it is to go along to, or go to the young people in the sense of going maybe via video conferencing to talk about one of these subjects, either personal education plan, and then bring it back to one of our formal meetings and then discuss what we've learned at this engagement with the youngsters about that subject. So if we can be a bit more creative, I think it would be a good idea. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Anna. Nicola, do you want to respond to that?
So just to say thank you very much, actually, because I think that's exactly what our young people want to hear. And I think that that is a real indication of how committed the committee is to trying to work with young people and move forward, because absolutely we need to change to meet their needs. I think what we found before is that sometimes changing the room, sometimes changing the time and different things is actually very helpful. I think absolutely we can have a look at the virtual model, and we may not have a choice initially anyway, mightn't we? So we'll have to do that. I think my personal experience is that it works well when you've established relationships with people, but I think perhaps initially, while we're trying to develop what we're trying to do with young people, it would be easier if we were all in the same room, if I'm honest. But we'll need to see, and we won't have choice, I think, initially anyway. So we'll need to do the best we can. But I think it is absolutely about trying to see things from their perspective and do things a bit differently. And hopefully, yes, in a perfect world, that's exactly what happens is you have your informal meeting where you get some learning and some insight into things, and then we do take it into the next formal meeting, because it should be linked. So the formal meeting would be about education, for example, in that one, and then we would talk about, so what are we going to do? What are the changes we need to make, or the improvements we need to make? And what is it you want to challenge us as officers to do? And then actually we show the impact of the committee, which addresses the point that Ofsted was making. Just so that's the idea. That's exactly how it works. If it works perfectly, obviously that's it. It won't always be perfect, but that's exactly what we try and do. So that's really helpful. Thank you.
So Nicola, we always used to have there was and I can't remember the precise name of it, but there always was, Liz, wasn't there, a Young Voices Matter or a Young People Council who used to meet and discuss things. Now, if we could just put into their agenda once in a while, like PEPs, and then sit in, maybe, if they'd allow us, and just listen to what they're saying, that could be the informal bit, and they might want to ask us some questions in that meeting, but then we'd come away and have our formal meeting to discuss the things that we heard in that. I mean, is that a way of doing it? Not trying to create a whole new thing, not reinvent the wheel. If they've already got a group of people who meet, then can we not just make use of that as a forum?
So I think Sika will talk in a minute about what we're trying to do in terms of developing the participation offer more broadly. I think at the moment it does need, so you're right, absolutely, there was a committee, is a committee. It has lost some of its key leading lights, if you like. As Councillor Every said, they have gone on, they've grown up. They've gone on to bigger and better things, and we are needing to rebuild that group of young people. I think some of the issue sometimes is that what we actually have quite a large children care population, and they are spread over a large area. And sometimes I think what can end up happening is that we only hear one part of the voice of children in care, so the children who are able to come to the meeting and have the discussion, and who tend to be with in-house foster carers. And I think one of the things we're really strongly trying to change, and this is one of the benefits of the virtual development, is that we can try and make sure that we're getting the voices of all of our children, even if they're placed in Scotland or Cornwall or wherever, and that we can feed that back to you. And I think there is also an issue about, I think the children, young people feel quite strongly that that's their meeting and that that's their space that they talk. So I think absolutely we want to try and get some two-way traffic going. But I think it's probably incremental steps. And we need to build on the two things in parallel, which is what I think we're trying to do, so that we end up with a really good model that goes round the whole loop, and you get the benefits of both things. And we will also be looking, but I think this is definitely in Sika's report, about opportunities for members to engage directly with young people and come to some of the events and things and have those informal conversations, which I think is also one of the secrets to it, is that just chatting, as we all know, to people, you do tend to hear quite a lot more information usually than in any kind of meeting context, no matter how informal.
All right, Anna, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Goldsack.
Well, I can keep it very short now because I agree with virtually everything that both Eliza and Anna have said, to be perfectly honest with you. The points I raised was I want to say, when you sub at committees like this, you're not in the regular throw of perhaps reading everything. So I'd really like to say well done, Nicola, on an excellent paper, because I feel that I did understand what you were wanting to present today. And for me, the highlights that came out of that, these aren't committee meetings. I know Eliza said, well, why would they want to come to the committee meetings? I don't think they are coming to committee meetings. We don't want them to be committee meetings. We have to structure them exactly as you and Anna have said, to the way that the youngsters want them structured. They're not for us. I did have a little wry smile at the thought of a Cambridgeshire County Council contracting with someone like Deliveroo for getting donuts virtually delivered when we hold virtual meetings, which I thought that would be quite a good fun. But I think the real key here is we have to follow the lead. We have to engage with some young people, then we have to follow their lead, which I think is exactly what Councillor Bradnam said, and I think that's absolutely spot on. We're doing it as you know. As you know yourself, Nicola, we're doing it locally in our ward with some particular issues, and we're listening, we're talking, we're engaging, and we're hearing what they want to say. And it's the old adage, you know, like the community wanted to get a youth club going. So people like me, who are now the embarrassing dad and even the embarrassing granddad, we say, oh, when we were kids, we used to have a disco on a Friday, let's put a disco on, and then no kids turn up. And you think, well, what's going on? Why do they want to come to a disco? Because they don't go to discos anymore. They don't go to, this is exactly what they don't do. We need to go out, speak to them, find out what it is. So I think it's a refreshing change, shall I say, Nicola, and I wish you well with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And Councillor Hay.
Right, a lot of what I was going to say has been very ably said up till now by the rest of the people who have spoken. I think virtual meetings do have their place, but I also think face-to-face meetings have a place. But what I would say, I think part of the problem we've had in the past is for a young child, it's very imposing to come into somewhere like Shire Hall. And I would hope that we would look at rotating where we hold these informal meetings so that children right across the area will get a chance to come and speak to us. Because I think that's been the problem in the past. Because we've been situated within Cambridge City, we've only effectively got children who can easily travel there. And so we're not hearing all the voices. My other point was, will there be a place for the foster carers within some of these informal meetings? Because I think, yes, we need to hear voices of the child because we're acting as corporate parents. But I think foster parents also have something to give, and there needs to be an understanding between the corporate parenting, the foster carers, and the children who actually live with those foster carers. So that's my point.
Nicola, did you want to come back on that?
I can do, yes. You're preempting all my reports, Councillor Haig. So yes, so absolutely, I completely agree with you. What we were actually proposing, and it is later on in the agenda, is that actually foster carers come a bit more formally to the formal meetings and actually present reports to you through officers. I think Rashenda's explained that's the way we need to do it, but it will be their report, and the Foster Care Association will be providing reports into you. We deliberately don't invite them to the informal meetings, or we're proposing we don't invite them, because actually sometimes young people want to say things about foster care and they want you to know what they think about it, and they never want to say anything negative about their foster carers in front of them. Even if it's not their own foster carer, they don't like doing that. So we're proposing that we separate those things out. But absolutely, I think they really do need to be feeding into committee. So we will be asking them, if you all agree, to provide a report to all the formal meetings and to come to those.
Thank you.
I think that's the right way forward, in actual fact. I hadn't thought about it along the lines of children not really wanting to speak in front of foster carers, but as long as they're being involved at some stage, and if they're coming to the more formal meetings and we've picked up things from what we're hearing from children, then we can get that message across to foster parents at that stage. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, because one of the things when we first read the report was whether we would get the coverage that we wanted for, I know Councillor Hay raised that with me, whether we would get the coverage of the reports and the subject areas that we wanted to drill down on. I'm just hoping everybody feels reassured that this process actually enhances that process rather than us doing it downwards, and the youngsters will have some input to us and we can feed back. Nicola, do you want to go back to the health assessments, which is item 3 on page 12 of that, because we just went on to the structure, and also to make a comment on the committee requesting briefing note, which is on page 15.
Of course, yes, thank you. So I was just turning, I had my page turned the wrong way, I couldn't find it. So yes, no, I've got it, thank you. So yes, so that if I do health assessments first, I think what I've understood, so I have inherited this, and Fiona, if there's anything I'm getting wrong, I'm sure Fiona will wave her hand at me. But I think we had quite a long period in Cambridgeshire where we were really struggling to get the process around initial and review health assessments to work effectively, where our timeliness was an issue, and where we perhaps weren't always in complete agreement with partners, particularly health, about the best way to resolve that. And I think that had become a little bit of an issue, and the committee were understandably quite concerned about that. There was a lot of work. There was then a working group set up, and an awful lot of work went into how we can improve the system, what can we do together. And actually, I think what I've understood is that actually we forged some really strong working relationships with health at that point, and actually that cracked, I think, a lot of the issues that perhaps had been dogging us. What happened in the middle of all of that was we implemented Liquid Logic, and I don't know if all members are fully cited on that, but Liquid Logic is a new case management system that replaced Capita One in January for children's services in Cambridgeshire. So that's for everything, all of the various areas, and it is very, very different to Capita One, and Capita One was quite an out-of-date system by the time we changed over, and was very problematic for people to record on, and very problematic to pull reporting off. So we were always kind of fighting a little bit against the tide with that. Liquid Logic is much clearer, much more straightforward, and has very helpful pre-populated forms. So what we did is we took some of the work that the working group have been doing together. We were still a little bit stuck with health in terms of some of the consent issues in relation to parents consenting to medicals. We proposed a new way of doing it on Liquid Logic, and actually the health were very happy with that once they realised how it would work and what would happen. I think they have been perhaps a little sceptical that it would deliver to their needs, but actually they're very happy with it. And we implemented it just recently because there was obviously a little bit of a delay because of COVID, so we hadn't been able to immediately prioritise it. But it was implemented fully on the 21st of June, and we've had a couple of teething problems just in terms of how we chase, and we don't need to chase in the same way essentially at all, and that took people a little bit by surprise in the system, but actually it's now working very well. And actually our performance, as you can see in the report, is actually now 88% for children within county, which is actually, I think, a significant improvement. So we want it to be higher. Obviously, we would always aim for the 90s, but it is, I think, a significant improvement. And what I want to see now is that we maintain that. I think the committee understands the difference between within Cambridgeshire and outside Cambridgeshire. So I'm afraid we're still not able to resolve that. I'm afraid that is a national issue that we have problems with in other areas as well. But I think internally we're actually doing, I'm quite pleased. And as I said, we need to be more ambitious, but actually it's a real turnaround, and Fiona and her team deserve a lot of credit for that, as do the other parts of the service. I don't know if anybody has any. Shall I move on? Shall I do the briefing note, and then if people have got any?
Bradnam's got her hand up. I don't know. Was this
sorry
about health?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just a quick one. It was on health. I can see the improvement in the first medical checks, which is great. Does it also capture dental checks?
So no, so this is specifically around initial health assessments and review health assessments. So dental checks are counted separately. So there's different performance measures for dental checks and for things like immunisations, and also for opticians checks. So they're all counted separately.
Can you
It wasn't so much the way it's counted. It was whether it happens soon after a child, or that at least a check is made that a child has had a dental check when the child goes into care. In the same way that you remember, our concern was that a child was going into care, but they weren't getting their medical check until quite a long time afterwards, weren't they? There was quite a pause. I was just concerned that in the same way that they'd be getting a medical check, they would also have an opportunity for a dental check.
So the way the system works is that what we now have is a two check process, if you like. So the initial health assessment, which is now taking place, generally speaking, within 20 working days, will ask whether there's been a dental check, and will remind the carer and the social worker, if necessary, they need to book one. But we also have, when a child first comes into care, we obviously have their first statutory review, and that's also within 28 working days. And that also checks whether they've had a dental check, and makes a very clear recommendation that they need to if they haven't. So we've got two ways of doing it. We do sometimes have difficulty with getting children registered with dentists. So that's one of our other difficulties. But no, absolutely, there is a very clear expectation, and that is included in both sets of forms. And I think that's been one of the other changes with the new initial health assessment form, is it breaks down very clearly those different things. So it says, have you had a dental check? Have you had an optician check? What's the date? What's the date? What are your immunisations? What's the dates? So it's all on there. So it's much easier to see whether a child has or hasn't had those things, and then obviously that's chased up.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. And just before we go on to the form, I'd just like to, Rashenda, could you acknowledge our thanks to Fiona and the team for the work that they've done on the health assessment? So really, I would really like that to be noted. So on page 15, we have a form, which is a committee requesting briefing note, which Nicola is going to explain to us. So
Yes, please, because I've no idea what the hell that is.
So what that is, that is a way of, because what I think the potential disadvantage of the new system we're proposing is that you won't get the same number of reports that you've been used to receiving. So I think that's just will be fact, because we won't be able to fit in as many reports. If the informal meeting is about essentially talking to children, having a case study, you won't have a meeting that's full of reports. So what we're proposing is that we have what's called a briefing note, which we can just send round. So if something happens between the 3 formal meetings that's important, that you've asked for an update or a briefing on, or Councillor Every has on your behalf, or something significant happens that, you know, we're clearly as officers we need to let you know about, then we can include it in a briefing note that can be sent round to you formally, but it gets captured as part of the committee's papers. Do you see? So, and we can have a discussion, and I'm happy to be guided by Rashenda on whether that's a public document always or not a public document. But what it would mean is that we do have a route to keep you updated with additional information if we need to, basically. And there may be some reports that you do just want for information, and we can send them around that way, and you don't, you know, need to discuss or feel that you want to discuss. But it is about trying to hone in on really what it is that you feel you need to know, and perhaps some suggestions and some guidance from us about what we think you ought to be knowing and asking. And it probably is a bit less than you've been used to, but it will, hopefully, if we get it right, that's the idea, it will really hone in on the things that you want to be trying to address and change for children.
Actually, that's how we worked through COVID, wasn't it? Because, and in fact, we ended up getting more information perhaps than we would have done formally. And I think particularly on a committee like ours, I'm not saying the others aren't really important, but this is such a fast moving area that to actually have that ability to ask for information. We won't overburden you, I promise you, but to have that I think is really helpful. So there's nobody else who's, well, you've all had an opportunity to speak, so I hope you've all had the answers that you need. So I'm proposing to take the recommendations A, B and C about the participation offer and the facilitation of the engagement, and the corporate parenting scorecard, which is actually further away, in block. So if I don't see any blue hands going up, I'll be quite happy to let those go, and if there are no hands, then I can just assume they're unanimous and just pass all the recommendations. We did talk about a little bit about training or workshop about our behaviour actually in an informal meeting with youngsters, and I don't know whether we all feel competent, able to be in a room with youngsters who will of necessity be dealing with issues that perhaps we haven't dealt with, and whether or not we feel that we need any extra support. Just something to think about. I know Nicola said that we might, because it's not going to be like you're not going to be like an assembly when you can just expect everybody to behave and just put that. It's going to be different for us to deal with, and I think we need to manage our own expectations of what we can achieve as we progress. Nicola, what do you think?
So yes, I mean, I think what I discussed with Councillor is we'd be quite happy to offer a workshop to members if that be useful, and we could sort of run through what we envisage an informal meeting looking like, talking a little bit about the young people that we would hope to be attending, and also perhaps just doing a little bit on scrutiny and what you would find, what kind of questions might be useful to be asking us, to get the most out of your time, because I'm conscious, like I said a minute ago, we are restricting it slightly. But also perhaps if that would be useful, some ideas about engaging with the young people as well. And I'm sure Sika will be very happy to be part of that with Fiona and I, if that would be useful to you.
So general feeling, do we want to pursue that? We might as well get a consensus now, because we'll all go off in the summer. So if you think it's something you'd like to do, we can do it on Zoom. Could you just raise your hand rather than? So.
I have put my blue hand up, Liz.
You have.
Yeah.
I apologise. So has Councillor.
I just wanted to say, I think a workshop would be very helpful, because I think before we go into these meetings, particularly where we're going into one-to-one meetings with these youngsters, we need to have some clear parameters of what is appropriate to ask these children and what is not appropriate, because it's very easy to, in the heat of the moment, ask something and you think to yourself afterwards, oh no, I shouldn't have said that. So I think a workshop would be very helpful.
Thank you.
Chairman, I didn't envisage us having one-to-ones.
No, we won't be having one-to-ones, but even in a group, you just throw a question into a group and so on. No, we would never have one-to-ones.
Sorry, I didn't mean one-to-ones in that sense. I was meaning where we're in a room with them rather than on a virtual.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much indeed. So if we can move on, thank you for your patience. Sika, it's your on, and we're on to agenda number 8, and it's about the young participations process. So this is the flesh on the bones, isn't it, of how it's all going to work?
Thank you, Councillor Every. Thank you, everybody. I think that the discussion that's ensued after Nicola's original presentation has actually covered pretty much all of the detail that sits within my report, I believe. So I don't want to repeat anything. So I'll bring my sort of highlights to a different focus. But of course, if there are any other questions or queries in relation to my report, we'll obviously deal with those. So thank you. You'll see in the report, the initial part of the report deals with the proposals around the new arrangements which you've now adopted, and some of the detail which has been explored through the discussion. You'll also see from the report, it highlights a summary of all the activity-based events that were held before the lockdown, which are the sort of events and highlights that you're quite familiar with. What you will also see is that since the lockdown, we've very quickly moved into providing our participation through a virtual offer. And that has included fortnightly newsletters, which are interactive, informative, newsletters with competitions and opportunities for young people to reach out back and engage with the participation team. And we actually produced 3 different target group newsletters, one for the under 12s, one for teenagers, and one for care leavers. So they have been published on a fortnightly basis. And core to those newsletters, there's always been something around COVID in child-friendly terms. There's always been a promotion of Mind of My Own and the opportunities for reaching out. There's been coverage of resources around emotional well-being and mental health during COVID. So very COVID specific resources and information, but also a wider sort of more interactive and fun-based activities and competitions. And we have had competition responses and winners all the way through. So there has been a level of engagement through those newsletters. And we also moved the meetings of the Children in Care Council members and the Care Leaver Forum members to a virtual platform. And again, very much child-led, we've engaged with the young people, that core group of young people, on a fortnightly basis. So there have been meetings with Children in Care Council members in small groups of up to 4 within the team's virtual space on a fortnightly basis. And that's allowed us to sort of consolidate relationships, continue to build on relationships, and do some really rich engagement and activity. And what we've done is taken this opportunity of COVID, to really reset how we engage with young people and reset the quality of our conversations with young people, and reset and reframe how we capture and report what young people tell us. And I think all of that is very relevant to the discussions we've just had, and actually places the young people in a really strong position to engage in a really purposeful and meaningful conversations with the committee going forward. And I hope that you'll see that in the inclusions in the information that I've included in this report. So, for example, the areas that we focused on in our virtual settings with young people has been to look at the start to work through the tiles of the promise. We've looked at our promise around education, support for education and attainment, interests and hobbies. We've looked at our promise around supporting young people to maintain contact with family and people who are important to them. And we've looked at our promise around supporting young people with the skills and abilities for a successful transition to independence. And what we did, we looked at that specifically from the perspective of how did COVID impact those areas of children's lives, and how well young people felt supported by their carers and social workers and other adults through COVID, and what young people's thoughts are about how adults, corporate parents need to help them in the transition out of COVID into the new normal. And so as part of our resetting, part of the resetting was really preparing and helping young people to prepare to engage in these conversations, but also resetting how we then frame the feedback that we get. So reframing it into exactly what the function of a Children in Care Council is, interacting with corporate parenting, with the corporate parents, which is about what are the challenge questions, where's the scrutiny, and where's the child wisdom, the care experience wisdom of actually, you could do this better for us if you might consider this or if you might consider that. So those are the kind of three facets of how we're recording the information that young people are sharing and their thoughts and their views. So I've included all of that information to illustrate to yourselves as members, to the committee, what that shift has looked like and where the shift has been in the conversation and the quality and the richness of information that's coming back that can help you and inform you and the work of the committee. So I hope that evidences to you how that shift is working and the difference it's making, and actually how that will stand in good stead for future arrangements as we move to the new arrangements for the interface between the committee and the council.
Thank you, Sika. I have to say, this is a huge report, and you can just by reading all the different facets of it, there's a tremendous amount of work has gone into this, and I'd like to thank you for that, because obviously what we've done is put together everything else we had into order, I suppose. That sounds a bit regimented, culminating in the Children in Care's Council and the Care Leavers Forum. I think a really, really excellent piece of work. Thank you very much to you and your team for doing that. Any specific questions that people would like to raise? I don't see any blue hands. I can't believe you haven't got any questions about that.
I sort of said the thrust of what I wanted to say earlier, and I think, you know, this report's brilliant and it's very detailed, and I like all the detail in it. I mean, I think the forum and everything else and the council and everything, they're fabulous ideas. I guess, you know, part of me really hopes this gets off the ground properly. We look forward to hearing how it goes. It's more like, you know, I really want to see how this develops, because I think it will be really important to, as I said, I'd rather we were swamped by too much participation, too many voices, you know, the meetings, you know, I'll be derailed, I don't mind. But I really want, you know, because otherwise it kind of doesn't really achieve what we wanted to achieve. But, you know, for the moment, I mean, I think it's all great.
The tone of the work that you're doing here, the fact that you are now getting the young people, because they're not physically here or even on Zoom, to talk to us as corporate parents. So you've given us ideas that they think we should have. You've given us challenges that we should take up. And I think perhaps at some time in the future, and I know this is another issue that Ofsted was looking at, which perhaps is as important, is the level of understanding and awareness that our other corporate parents have that are outside this particular group. I know perhaps they're more likely in CYP, but all our members are corporate parents, and we need to make sure that they're aware of this too. We'll need a mechanism for that. I just would like to commend the care leavers information, please. You realise that the Cambridge University Caspi group is doing a research project on the care leavers, and have started their research. So this is, I'm sure, actually I think Joe Gilbert, who's the PA, is actually listening in. So it's really important that they get this information as well, because it's another piece of research which I think is going to be really helpful. So Anna, you now have got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Liz. One of the things, and I'm sorry if it's not in this report, one of the things that kind of ticked my consciousness was the fact that somewhere in the report, and I think it must have been in here in participation, it was that once the children were in secure foster care, they tended not to take part so much in children in care activities because they felt like they were part of the foster family. So they didn't feel like children in care anymore. They felt part of a family, which is lovely. But I just wondered if the way then to engage with them is with that family. Anyway, it was just that thought that, you know, actually we've kind of achieved something. If we have children who don't feel their children in care anymore, that's great, because they feel part of a proper family, which is wonderful. I mean, we're still looking after them, but from a distance, like benign godparents rather than immediate. But I just wondered how we then engage with those families.
Yeah, Anna, thank you very much for noticing that and raising that. And what we do, we are very much taking a very pragmatic and dynamic approach to participation. So some young people are joining us in our Teams virtual meetings. Other young people, like the young people who made that comment, we continue to keep in touch with on a one-to-one. So if we have a theme that we're exploring, if we have a survey or a questionnaire, those young people who won't engage in that sort of public setting, we will engage them on a one-to-one. So there are a number of young people like that who we continue to engage, and their voice still comes through and it still feeds into that feedback loop. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, we're being asked to comment and provide feedback, and I think we probably have on the events and activities. So if we're all happy, we'll move on. Anna, can you take your blue hand down, and unless you're going to, okay. So that means actually perfect move to the next agenda item, Anna, if I may say, which is agenda item number 9, which is how we engage with our foster carers and how they engage with us on this subcommittee. So this is a report that's going to be delivered to us by Fiona. So Fiona, if I could, where are you? Everybody moves around, and I've almost, you were over there last time. Fiona, thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Every. So my report is very brief. What we are asking subcommittee to consider is to provide the opportunity for the chairperson or the representative to attend the formal meetings and to provide a report to subcommittee in relation to their activity and any themes or consultation that we've had with them. So it is envisaged this will be a way that's, as we have said already, that foster carers can contribute to the business at the meeting, and you can hear directly from them as well.
Okay, and actually this is great. Thank you for bringing this, because we were looking for a way of how we were going to do that with the I suppose it's not so newly formed Foster Carers Association, but it's not that old, is it? But we struck up a really good relationship and rapport with them, and we were trying to find the right way to make that more formal and to make them an integral part of our process, especially as they are with the youngsters 24/7, so they certainly have a voice. So any questions of Fiona? Anna?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm really glad that we're proposing to do this formally. We've had such good interactions with the chair of the foster carers organisation before. Absolutely, we need to hear from them, and I'm very glad we're formalising it. Thank you.
Excellent. Anybody else want to say anything? Not many questions when you've written such a lovely report, Fiona. I'm sorry. So we're being asked to consider the attendance of the Cambridgeshire Foster Carers Association chairperson or the representative, which you said, and also to consider accepting a report from the Cambridgeshire Foster Care Association at each of its meetings. And I'm absolutely certain that they would welcome to do that. Are they aware of this paper coming to us today? Yeah, right. Okay. So I think I've got no blue hands that say that they want to dissent from this. So please send back our regards to the Foster Carers Association and say we're absolutely delighted they're going to be on our group, and we look forward to receiving their reports at each meeting. Thank you. Thanks
Fantastic.
very much. Thank you. So that moves us on to agenda item number 10, which is the performance report, which is Nicola again. And this is where Nicola is going to introduce the new scorecard. So.
Thank you, Councillor Every. So yes, so we will continue. So there's two bits to this. We will continue to provide the basic performance information, which are the numbers. So how many children we have in care, number in-house foster placements, etc., etc. So that will continue to come to you, just to give you a sense of what our care population is made up of, and I do think that's quite important. And we can have further discussions as time goes on about particular cohorts of children, if that would be helpful to the committee. We do have information about dental checks in this one as well, so we have that information there. But what I particularly wanted to draw the committee's attention to is a proposed new performance report. So I'm doing it like this. I find it very difficult not to be visual, I'm afraid. So a new performance report, because I think my understanding of the old reports were that they were quite long, quite unwieldy, lots of information in there that wasn't necessarily particularly beneficial. And again, my experience is that if we can produce something that's much more visual, that gives you the key information, so it's meant to be just on one, obviously a perfect scorecard is just one side, and we couldn't quite manage that, but we've tried to get to two sides. We would be providing this for you at each meeting so that you could see what the key information around corporate parenting is. And what we've tried to do is also incorporate information about staffing and caseloads that is relevant for corporate parenting. So obviously at the minute there are no arrows in the change in the performance bit, but over time they would go up and down, and you would have a sense of whether that's good performance, bad performance, those kinds of things. But it will just give you, hopefully, the holistic overview of what's being provided and how we're doing in terms of children in care in the broadest possible sense. So that's really what it is, and I'm very happy to take comments and queries on it. The performance team, it took a while to hone it for us, but we do think this is the key data you need.
Well, I just need to go to our resident councillor researcher, who's Councillor Bradnam, who's very good at this sort of thing. So, Councillor Bradnam, what's your thoughts on this?
Thank you. Thank you very much for providing us with a concise digest of all the information which we might wish to consider at each of our formal meetings. I sort of peripherally am slightly worried that by digesting it we lose some of the interpretative detail, but I think there's enough here for us to work with. One of the things is sometimes to do just with layout. Can I just get a general feeling that we read column 1 first all the way down and then go up to the top of column 2, as it were, because there are different subjects. So if, for example, you look on page 1, we've got the first thing is headline figures, and then there's a histogram, a table, and then some bar charts sideways. So that's all about headline figures. And then we go up to service standards on the right-hand side. And then there's a bit on placements. So it's just something to do with the navigation might be kind of helpful. The other thing is, for example, on page 2, on the right-hand side, when we're talking about the very top histogram is talking about adoption. So we've got a series. So we've got children in care who go missing with number of episodes. So we've got 20 children adoption. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, or is adoption the bit below? So do you see what I mean? I'm hesitating. And then we've got 35 episodes. Or are they children, 22 children went missing in June, which created 33 episodes? And if so, what's the 35? Do you see what I mean? It's just kind of navigating your way around those diagrams.
So I agree with you looking at it like that. I think what performance have been trying to do is to fit as much in as they can on the two sides, because I did say to them I wanted it to be two sides and that was it. So I'm very happy to go back to them and see if we can tidy it up a bit and perhaps colour code it. Mine's in black and white at the minute. See if we can colour code it a bit more effectively.
We're in colour, so it's we've got
So but I think what it should have is 4 quadrants, you know, and that's what a proper balanced scorecard is. It's 4 quadrants. It doesn't fit like that. So I'll go back. I'm very happy, and you know, these are very helpful comments. I'll go back.
I don't mind. So we don't have, because obviously some of the information is likely to have more space required. If there's a histogram, it will need more space than text. But I just think, for example, so just specifically on page 2, the graph at the top, which has a grey heading saying children in care who go missing, the title adoption, I think, is to dealing with the data below it. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the heading for the graph is the children who go missing. Okay.
Yeah.
It's to do with spacing, I guess, and fonts and formats, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's missing from there, and this is a mock-up, if you like, for you to have a look at. I think what's missing is they seem to have missed off the missing heading. Yes, just ironically. So that's what. So if it just said missing above it, it would make more sense, wouldn't it? So I'm very happy to go back to them and see if we can tweak it just so it reads a bit more clearly. Absolutely.
But also, Chairman, I'm just slightly anxious. I don't mind. I'll go with the other people's view on this. But do you remember in the previous report we used to have annotations which, for us, explained, broadly speaking, what we were looking at, and we haven't got that in this. This may be just a simpler format and so it's easier to understand, but I just think it would be a shame if we lost the detail that gives us the colour of the story, if you see what I mean.
Nicola, what's your
so what I'm wondering is whether this is perhaps another topic for the workshop, and that we actually go through. So I hear what you're saying. So if I look at the old one that you used to get, talk a bit to BI about how we can improve the look of this and all the rest of it, and then perhaps if one of the things we look at in the workshop is what this is and isn't telling you, and what else you feel you need to add into this to scrutinize more effectively, then I think that would probably be a really useful part of the discussion, and then we can hone it. I think if you're happy to support the concept in principle today, we can obviously continue to work on exactly what it looks like and exactly what it contains over a period of time, and it may not have everything we need, and we can have a think about it, but my general experience is that actually once you get used to the format of it and it reads a bit better, obviously, actually it becomes much clearer which things are working and which things aren't, and actually facilitates a more useful discussion for the committee, because you can immediately see, I don't know, you know, that it's all gone red for the missing, and actually we're really quite concerned about that, and what are our plans to sort that out, really. So I think it does fulfill the function, but we can absolutely look at it and try and tweak it a bit more if that would be useful in the workshop.
Yeah, I think the format is, particularly those who are perhaps not as focused on figures as Anna is, and trust me, she will drill down on all of them if there isn't an explanation, so which is absolutely great. This is great, because I think you're right. You'll get a picture, won't you, meeting upon meeting, as to actually what's happening with the trends. Mark, you wanted to come in there.
I just thought it might be an interesting view to. So I'm a sub, right? So you get the reports and you read them, and I saw this, and I have to pick up on what Anna is saying. I thought children adoption. It was really scrambling my brain. Right now, if counsellors and officers on the call are looking at these reports on a regular basis, they could probably find their way around it. But I do think it's not as difficult a fix as perhaps we're trying to make it out to be.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Nicola. If the words adoptions, care leader, education, health service and standards were in a different colour or in a typeface box, or that showed us that they were headings, or even there was an individual square around each individual subject area, I think it would just be that simple. And quite frankly, I think that's an easy fix. The actual presentation and the understanding of the data, once you've battled through that, is great.
Annie, have you left your blue hand up, or did you want to come back?
Sorry, it's not somehow it's something about the format of how I'm taking part doesn't make it easy to
come back. Okay, not to worry. I'll just ask. It's fine. So thank you very much indeed for that. So the general opinion there, Nicola, is yes, great. We would really like to have this, and I think it being part of the workshop, we'll just finalise it for us all. And we do like the colour. So we've been asked to note the content of the report and to raise any queries with lead officers, which we have done. So now we could move on, please, to agenda item 11, which is the Independent Reviewing Officers Annual Report for 2019-20. Ollie, thank you so much for your patience in waiting. Thank you very much indeed. If you'd like to present your report.
Yes, of course. I was just trying to work out how to unmute, you know, when you've been listening for such a long time. Okay, all right, thanks for the opportunity. So hopefully you've all had a chance to look at the report. So I'll just summarize some of the highlights, and then there may be you know, I'll be happy to answer any questions, obviously. So I manage the independent reviewing officers in Cambridgeshire. Just not sure how familiar members are on the role. So I'll just give you a very brief overview. So the independent reviewing officer is a statutory role. We sit within SQA, Safeguarding and Quality Assurance, and each child in care has an IRO who will oversee the quality consistency of their care plan. One of the central ways they do that is through statutory child in care reviews. A child will have, as Nicola mentioned earlier, a child will have their first review within 20 working days. And after that, it will be within 3 months after that, and then within every 6 months subsequently, and then rolling every 6 months. And IROs can bring forward a review at any time if either the child wants it, or if there's any significant change in the plan. And in those reviews, the chair will look at the plan, look to see that the child's had all of their needs met, and make sure that it's suitable and is going to help the child to achieve their best outcomes. And at the review, the chair will set some decisions, some actions for the direction moving forward over the next 6 months, anything that the social work team haven't picked up on or need to just focus on with the child. And critical within all of that process is the IRO's relationship with the young person. So the young person is central to the whole process, really. The IRO has an independent relationship with them, separate to the social work team, separate to the social worker. The IRO will, as far as possible, try and visit them, speak to them on the phone, and incorporate them into their reviews. And normally try and set the agenda with the young person, so that they can prioritize what they want to speak about. So that's just an overview on the process, really, and on the purpose of the role. So just looking at the report, we're a very busy service. You can see that we've done 2,275 reviews in the last year, which sounds like an awful lot. We have got a lot of, well, we've got a really good, stable team of staff, very experienced staff. In fact, one of my staff is leaving, sadly, at the end of the month after 19 years with us. But it's a busy team, and you know, we've got, as you know, a large number of children in care, so that is a large number of reviews. Yet the timeliness of the reviews has continued to be really good this year, so I'm really proud of them to be able to always stick very closely to those time frames, which are set out obviously in the statutory guidance. And one of the key responsibilities for the IROs, as well as you know, keeping the child at the centre and conducting reviews, is ongoing monitoring to make sure that the care plan is progressing, and that there's no drift, really. The key principle is there is a purpose to the child being in care. So the ongoing monitoring, a key part of that, as you will have read, is the escalation protocol that we have within our service, which is essentially a standardized method of communication between us and the social work service in terms of any areas of drift or delay or issues that have raised concerns for IROs. So we just have a standardized method of communicating and recording and reporting back on those. So, I mean, the report speaks for itself. I suppose what some of the key parts that I just wanted to highlight really is, as I've mentioned, around the stability of the team and the impact of the consistency for young people with their IRO has definitely been really positive. Most children have known their IROs for a long time. Amidst sometimes they've had to have perhaps some changes of social worker sometimes, and so that consistency has been really good for them. As I was speaking about just now, the child is key and central to the review process, and we've had 55% of children over the age of 4 attend their reviews last year. I would like that to be considerably more. But you do have to think about a bit similar to the conversation that you were having earlier on, is about how to make the meeting as inviting as possible for young people, when obviously there are also serious issues to be discussed, sensitive issues, sometimes, particularly if they are looking at challenges within care planning or difficulties in relationships, and the context of why the child's in care. So children don't always want to come to those meetings, and that's where the IRO has to be very creative about how they're going to elicit the child's views. So 55% attended in person, another 36 did convey their views via either someone else or through, we have consultation documents that we've designed, child-friendly consultation documents that go out to them, or obviously we have Mind of My Own, and other methods like that. So I would like to get that number up still, I have to be honest with you. So that's work for us to look at over the next year. I'm just going to focus a little bit on the IRO's work on sort of tracking permanence. Obviously they all do it on an individual basis with children, but collectively that means we have a broad overview of how the organisation is working for progressing the plans for children. And we refer to permanence meaning them being settled, stable, with a legal order that is appropriate for them. If they're looking to start leaving care, it means that they are that's being done in a timely way. And I've put a pie chart in there, and I hope it makes sense. But to give it a bit of context, in the full report, it shows that over the last year there's been really good progress on that from an organisational perspective, and we've got more children now. And in terms of proportion, we've got more children who are settled and stable. We've got fewer children where there's issues that need addressing to help move those plans on. There are still some, and that's the work that we continue to do, and that's the conversations we continue to have with the service. But it's a better picture than it was last year, and I'm really pleased about that. And I think that is largely down to the collective efforts, obviously, of the service and the improvements they've made, and equally within my service, and the collaboration between. In terms of part of that, as I've said, is around the escalation protocol. You might notice that there's significantly more escalations and alerts raised over the last year than there were over the previous 12 months. And you might remember back to last year, there were more last year than there were over the previous year. And that's quite difficult to drill down into. But one of the central factors for that, I think, is actually around the embedding of the system. It is significant as well of issues that have needed to be raised. And you'll see I've broken it down into broad kind of areas where IROs have been flagging to the system that there's things that need addressing. So that has accounted for some of that increase in escalations, but also I think that it is really about IROs gaining confidence in their communication with the service to know what to raise, at what time they're raising it. And what we're finding now is that the response time from the service is getting better and better. So the system itself is really starting to work well. We will all, our type of service will always need to raise things. That's what we're there for. And what we're looking for is an increase or an improvement in that response time. And that's what we're looking at gradually over time. So the rest of the report looks at the feedback for our service, which you can see is largely positive. Next year, we're going to be looking at some further improvements in how we elicit feedback about our own practice. And I've put some highlights there about the impact of our service. As I've said, some examples, some case examples there about specific escalations that have been raised and the outcomes that those have brought about, but also some of the impact in terms of our relationship with the operational service as well. And then my report finishes with some of our key objectives for next year, which you can see. So hope that gives you a bit of an overview. I hope I haven't garbled.
It is a very critical service that you provide, and we appreciate that. And I know we've had the conversation that it's bland because it's stats, and actually behind all of those stats, there's a story that you can't share with us. And we've had that discussion before. But good to see that things are improving, and that you're keen to continue with that. Anna, you have a question.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to say thank you very much, because I think well, the first thing I noted was a caseload of 60 is considered moderate. And I thought, crikey, that sounds more than moderate to me. So thank you very much for the hard work that you and your team are doing. I put, really? But then also, I did also notice this question of escalation. IROs raised 738 escalations to social care. And I thought, crikey, that's over 1 per child. But then I thought, well, perhaps that's why things are improving, because you're escalating, as you say, your staff are having the confidence to escalate something maybe more quickly before things go wrong. And so that's actually would have a good outcome for our children. Perhaps you could just clarify that for me. The other one was on page 63 of your report. No, hang on, is that on the next report? Yeah, in the actual body of the report, it says the number of children in care is dropping. And I wondered if that's partly because of being able to move more of those children into independence as per your, well, no, there's two different things. Your report talks about moving more 42% into permanence, doesn't it? But I also wondered if part of the reason then children in care number has dropped a little bit is because we've been able to move more to independence at the older age. And one of the, just a slightly strange thing is, who decides if it's appropriate for a child to have an advocate? Is it the child or the IRO?
Okay. Shall I'll respond to your points in turn, if that's all right, Councillor Bradnam. Sure. Caseloads, yes, I appreciate it. It does look like a lot in terms of a number, and that's perhaps because you're used to looking at social work caseloads. And I guess what we have to remember is that IROs are significantly, they take a step back in compared to social workers. So they're contact with children is, as I say, you know, after the child's been in care for over 6 months, it will be 6 monthly reviews and probably a visit in between. Whereas obviously social workers were looking at, you know, 4 to 6 weekly for some and perhaps a little bit less for others. So the guidance is between 50 and 70. So that's why I say 60 is moderate, and it does fluctuate. If a caseload of 50 is good, really, and I think other neighbouring authorities would agree with that. In terms of the escalations, yes, I mean, well, as I said before, it's been really interesting. I think there's lots of reasons as to why they've gone up so significantly. And I think a lot of that actually is about, as you've pointed out, confidence of the IROs. And as their escalations become effective, they become more confident. And so you see more. And I think probably my colleagues in corporate parenting would agree that you know, their staff have seen a significant increase, and it's been noticed. The IRO can be quite an uncomfortable role in that respect. They really do have to have the ability to raise issues assertively whilst being able to maintain, you know, good working relationships with people. And it's not always easy, but we work really hard on that, and it's really, really important because actually, as we all know, you know, you get the best success when you're working collaboratively. So we do try to do that, and I think that that's improving. But I do think that a lot of that increase in number is about the confidence of IROs, and it takes a long time. You know, I've been managing the service for 3 years, and I've noticed the increase over that time. But I think we're somewhere where we want to be now, really. And I would be surprised. I may eat my words, but I'll be surprised if we see double the number again next year, because we haven't. You know, you can't do that much more. But yes, so I note that observation, though. In terms of the number of children in care going down, Nicola would also, and Fiona would also
put her hand up to, I think, probably to that. Is that, I don't want to cut across you, Ollie, but I don't know whether between you wanted to answer that.
I think probably it's more a question for me than Ollie, to be fair to her. I think so I think the straight answer to your question is that we've had less children coming into care, Councillor Bradnam. So children achieve independence at 18, so we will always have a rotating number of children moving through the system, and Cambridgeshire has had quite a significant number of unaccompanied children as part of its care population. They tend to come in older, they tend to be 16, 17 when they come into care, and they move through obviously quite quickly. So if you have more UASCs, then you tend to have a quicker number of children coming out the other end, if you like. But Fiona's service has done quite a lot of work with RAPs. I think people will be familiar with them. And we have been looking at trying to rehabilitate children back to family situations where that's appropriate and has been risk assessed as children get older. So there has been that piece of work ongoing as well, and some really successful examples of that actually over the last sort of 9 months, Fiona, I think is probably about right. But it is largely been about the number of, we have managed to reduce the number of children coming into the system with some of our other initiatives, including family safeguarding, but also trying to just work more closely with families around what the alternatives are to children coming straight into care. I think the other thing I'd comment about the escalations is it's a bit of a two-way process. So yes, I think the IRO service has moved on significantly, and I think they are very much holding the service to account, and that's a very valuable function for Fiona and I, because we can't know everything about every single case all of the time, and actually it's incredibly helpful that we have colleagues in the IRO service highlighting issues for us. But an escalation can be quite a minor thing. So you will have one case where you might have 4 or 5 escalations about particular different issues, which is why the numbers seem, because I know Councillor Bradman commented at the beginning, that's almost more than one per child. It could be that there's 3 or 4 different issues for a young person. And so that's how it adds up. So they're not always very serious concerns about care planning. Sometimes they are, absolutely, and they're being drawn to our attention, but they can be a whole range of issues. But it is very useful that the service are doing that. I don't know, Ollie, do you want to answer? I think the last bit was about the advocates, wasn't it? So I don't know if you want to, just finish off.
Yeah, thanks, Nicola. Yeah, so in relation to the advocacy, so we work with our partners NIAS, who provide advocates for children in care. Your question was about, I think, about who decides if the child needs an advocate, and the answer is anybody really. The referral can be a self-referral. So the child can, it's a very simple process online, can make their own referral, or if they can ask for someone else to do it, or they can indicate that they would need help to do that. The advocate will only work with the child if the child wants them to work with them, because they're there to help, amplify their voice. So yeah, I hope that.
So a child could request an advocate.
Yeah, could request,
or a foster carer could, if they wish to.
Yeah, and they do. Foster carers could suggest that perhaps the child might benefit from an advocate, but again, the advocate will only work with the child if the child wants it. Yeah,
that's fine, as long as it's any option.
Yeah, and it's helpful. Anybody can make the referral, so the foster carer could make the referral themselves. Because the child might have an issue that they'd like to raise with any one of us, or and they might not want to come to us to say, I want to speak to my advocate about you, for example. So yeah, it's a good system.
Right, any more speakers or questions? Nicola, you're blue, you've gone. Sorry, then it went down. So I always feel sad, when we say we're only going to note the report, when there's such a lot of work gone into it, and it's such an important report, and the way you present it is very much in a way that we understand, and it's really important. So we are noting the report, but for us it's more than that. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
So now we move on to sort of the nuts and bolts of how we go forward now, because basically we're going on to the training plan, and looking at the training plan, of course we've lost chunks of it because we've lost them through COVID. So I don't know whether obviously these were for noting, but if you pull up page 85 of 90, you'll notice that there are things that we have missed because of COVID, and how we want to address that. So I'm looking particularly at item number 10, which was about briefing members on the personal advisors and roles, etc., and the local offer. And I know Nicola and I have spoken about this, because the pilot that we've got going with our young care leavers, and there are 10 youngsters who go to CRC, now have business mentors, and all the business mentors have been trained and they've all been matched, and we're now in a position of the first meetings taking place. We're absolutely delighted with the work that's been done. There's a huge amount of work has been done on this throughout COVID. Never thought we'd get it together, but they did. The officers were absolutely great. And actually our own Simon Bywater, who's the chair of CYP, is one of the mentors. So it's going to be interesting to see how he feeds back on all of this. And we're already finding the next 10 mentors for the next cohort. So we've missed that opportunity to learn about that. And obviously 12th of June we had again, there was a member seminar that we were going to do for all our corporate parents. So we've missed those two, and we've talked now about a workshop that we would like to have regarding the way we go forward. So I don't know, I'm open, Richard, I'm sure I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm open to suggestions about how we actually move this forward, because this training plan links absolutely with our agenda plan, which is coming up, which is also going to have to change, because we're going to have to start moving into our own informal meetings based on themes and so on. So it's important that we have a synergy between these. I don't want to lose the opportunity to talk about the local offer, because one of the meetings we missed was moving into adulthood, and that was quite key. So I'm actually going to put Nicola on the spot, because so I think it would be quite useful, and also Fiona, I think you too. I think it would be really useful for now that we've accepted and we're going forward with the plans that you've all put forward. Thank you very much for that. About the best way to take those things forward, and of course, if all of you all the other councillors want to unmute and go in as well, that would be absolutely fine. Because now we've got Mark who wants to say something, and followed by Anna. So Mark, do you want to speak before Nicola, or? Yeah,
just very quickly. First and foremost, it's been mentioned in a couple of the last papers about workshops, and you've got workshops coming and this, that, and the other. Can you please make sure? I mean, we can't always guarantee to attend, but can you please make sure that the subs get the chance? Because the more opportunity we've got to have some knowledge, the more active we can be when we have the opportunity to stand in at these meetings. There's that one. And the second one is, I would have really liked your June 12th Care Leavers Members Seminar. That would have been one that I would have made a beeline to be at. Don't rule out virtual seminars. I know people are, probably getting a bit fed up with virtual, but to me, there's no reason why they can't. You book a seminar and say, we're running it. If anything, I think you're pretty surprised by the attendance, because people would be very interested to come in. And let's face it, they've only got to walk into the home study or open up the laptop and they're in the room. So I would encourage the use of virtuals, as indicated before. It looks like we could be on them till next spring, so let's use them.
Yeah, hold that thought. And Anna.
Yes, I was going to say also, I actually think briefings and seminars actually work really rather well under video conferencing, and I think they actually tend to be, the nature of it is delivery of information with an opportunity for questions afterwards. So that actually works quite well under video conferencing. So I think I agree with Councillor Goldsack. And also I think it would be a great shame if we missed these planned opportunities for training, because I think we need them. So yes, please, if people want, and can we not use them, things like the member seminar slot to do them in. And also, I don't know whether you've noticed, but every meeting I've been at, there's hardly been any apologies, because everybody's been able to be there because we're all glued to our homes. So I think we could have lots of people there if we did that. Thank you.
No, that's absolutely fine, because one of the things we suffered from with seminars, member seminars before, is on this topic that we got the same people always came who were very keen, and actually we didn't reach a wider audience. And I agree with both of you that actually it may be that because people are at home, they would actually link into something like this. And we've got no seminars planned as far as I can see at all. So Nicola, I will ask you about, you know, how we shape this, because we've got one workshop coming, and then there's 2 opportunities for member seminars that we've lost.
So I think so this is a new area for me. So just to own up to that. So I've not done members seminars as much before. But I think the logical suggestion, I think, listening to what you're saying, is that perhaps what we need to do is to perhaps start again with the training plan. So if we link it to the new model that we're agreeing we're going to operate, look at a workshop to help develop that model, but then perhaps try and use the seminars. We can agree together what we think the topics are, but I'm very much hearing the care leaver one is dear to your heart. So we could start with that one, but then perhaps target who we are inviting to them. And I think that perhaps will go back to your earlier point, Councillor Every, about how we engage the wider council and other members in it, and that perhaps we deliberately say we want X number of people to come to this, and actually we're going to send direct and personal invites to members that you want to identify, for example, and perhaps talk to Councillor Bywater about some of that as well. And then we can try and engage people. But I think it's probably about, you know, recognising where we are. I also agree that actually that is a good model for videoing. I think that works quite well for people. And we can perhaps design, you know, a couple of those that will work effectively. But then what we do is we think carefully about who we want to attend those. I absolutely agree about the subs, and I think, you know, we would include those in the corporate parenting training. But I think if we're trying to get a wider message across, we've perhaps got a really good opportunity at the minute. So that would be my initial thinking on it.
But Chairman, if I may just rudely interject, the members seminars are open to everyone, and I think this care leavers seminar that would have been on the 12th of June, there's absolutely no reason why every member shouldn't attend, because they're all corporate parents. We are all corporate parents. We all need to hear what's being said, and it's no different. It's absolutely immaterial whether we have, in terms of the functioning of it, we can have 60 members there if we want.
Well, I think that's a key one, because I want to keep the momentum going of that the local offer and so on. So I suspect if we put in a seminar now, or Rishenda is going to tell us what we can and can't do now. She's got a blue hand up. So just listen to Rishenda and all will become clear. Thank you, Rishenda.
I was just going to clarify in terms of the members seminars, because obviously the usual practice is to have a members seminar every month. Yes. And there are a number of items on there. When the lockdown happened, the decision was taken that we would put those on hold. I think because obviously an awful lot of meetings were being arranged virtually and we weren't quite sure how those would work. So at the moment, the members seminar programme is on hold. But certainly, I mean, that's something we could perhaps take back to group leaders and see if they felt that this was something we could either begin to do just individually for perhaps this particular area, or whether they would like to go back. So, I mean, I could take that as an action if that would be helpful.
Yes, please. That would be really good, and we'll be able to take that back to our own groups as well and push for that. And one of the things, everybody attending is great, and we would like that, but I would like all chairs of committees to attend, and vice chairs, because of the impact of what the decision making they're making in their own committees. We don't have anything on our committee papers which say consider the impact on decisions that you make on our care leavers, which I know they do at Peterborough, and I know this has to be done differently, but to make all our chairs aware that decisions that are being made will have quite distinct impact on our youngsters is something which want to work towards having in our papers. I've spoken to Wendy about it, and I'll speak to her again. So if we could say then that the first seminar we would like is to have a care leavers a seminar and put that on the drawing board whilst we speak about putting back the seminars, and then when we have our workshop, discuss what we would like to have across the next 12 months in terms of seminars to upskill our corporate parents. That would be great. So we need to put in a workshop. Nicola, no pressure. So before we sort of meet again, and I think that sort of takes us on, if you don't mind my saying, so immediately onto what the agenda plan looks like, because the next scheduled meeting is the 9th of September, which is round the corner. Almost, because we have August in front. And this, we would need to think about which would be the first meeting that we would have that would be informal. And I think that's a decision that we can take collectively, because we need to be mindful of the work that's going to go into that to get location, subject matter, youngsters in a place where we can actually successfully as possible run that first meeting. So I'm sort of looking at Nicola and Fiona here as to what would be the best approach, if I may, Rishenda, if that's okay.
So I think, thank you, Councillor. What I would suggest is that 9th of September is going to be quite a bad day for children, young people. In theory, they're all going back to school, and it will be the first week probably for some of them, and I think it's going to be quite challenging to manage that for our children, young people particularly. Some of that's quite hard. Some kids have been going to school throughout, obviously, and it might not be quite as difficult as I'm envisaging. But I would suggest that we probably do September as the formal meeting, and then the next one is the informal. But I mean, I'm happy. I don't know, Sika may and Fiona may have a different view about that. We normally try and do informal, formal, informal, formal, because the informal is meant to be informing the formal, if you like. So it's not ideal, but I think it's a difficult date, I think, if I'm honest. But I don't know, Fiona, you know, if you have a different view about that.
No, I think I'd agree with that, Nicola.
Sika as well, I think you were nodding.
Yeah, Councillor Every, I would agree, and what I would suggest is we can certainly, within the model as proposed, we would want to present a report to the formal meeting. Yeah. So the formal meeting can have a report from the young people with feedback and information.
So that would mean, and that gives us a chance to do our workshop as well, doesn't it? So it gives us a bit of timing. So the agenda items that stand on the 9th are fine, because we the virtual school head teacher, Claire has talked to us about when she's going to deliver a report, so she will be ready to deliver a report then, which will be quite interesting. And we do need to get on with the annual corporate parenting report, don't we, Fiona? So that's something which perhaps we could leave that meeting as it is, and then plan towards the 18th of November being our first informal. Would that work with the office?
Does anybody know where 18th of November fits with the school calendar? Is that anywhere near a half term or an end?
After a half term.
Yeah.
I might actually make it easier, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think it would be useful. I mean, I've sort of like, I'm quite happy with what everybody else has said. I would very much start putting it in now, just to see if it works. And then you can let us know, and then we can make any changes if necessary. I mean, I would, to be completely honest, I'd rather be pushed around. I'd rather have to change dates if we have to accommodate people. You know, it's the way it is.
So you're okay with that, members? Are you happy with that? Just nod at me. You don't have to put blue hands up. But everybody seems to be okay with that. And we are all aware that we are at the beginning of a new phase, which is really exciting for us, and hopefully just as exciting for you to work with us on that. So we obviously will be guided about reports and so on. So if that's okay, Nicola, Fiona and Zika, is that we'll go ahead with that. And if you could work with us on a date for the workshop, that will give us, and we can start to work on a member seminar and so on. That will obviously keep some things in place. And don't forget, of course, that we now have our form, which says that if we want to know anything, we can fill it in. It would be quite useful if you were going to indicate that you wanted something, if you could let me know that you're going to put that in, or do it via me, so that I've got some idea of what's actually happening. Otherwise, we don't want scattergun approaches to responses, and we need to have a flow. So just before we leave, because that's the end of the meeting, is there anybody else who would like to say anything that would, that fits into what we've been doing or want to see happening because it's new in the future? So if not, okay, well, it just rests with me to say thank you so much for all the work that you've done, and particularly the work that you've done over COVID. We've had the reports from CYP about what's been happening with children and safeguarding, so we've got all those, and we are grateful that we're now back with the momentum. Really looking forward to working with you all. I think we're going into a really exciting era, not just for us, but hopefully the young people. And the key will be, the KPI will be, will they feel that they have had a voice and we have acted on what they have said, and that what they have said has made a difference. If we can manage to achieve that, and we need to have evidence of that, then I think we will have moved things forward. So thank you very much indeed for your time. Have a wonderful holiday, whatever it might look like, and please remain safe. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank
you to James and Richard.